So I have the long gusset part for my front area, and I've cut my 8-inch zipper aperture as per the instructions in the pattern. And again, I'm going to use glue rather than double-sided tape, just because I'm better with glue than I am with double-sided tape. I've cut my zipper. My zipper is a little longer than the pattern suggests, because I've used because I need a little bit where I've cut the teeth away, and I've made a few stitches across that top end. And now I'm going to lay this gusset over the top of my zipper, making sure that the zipper teeth are sitting centrally within the aperture, in exactly the same way as we did with the previous zippers. I've got a bit of glue on my zipper pull, so I'm just going to wipe that clean. I'm just going to push it down to secure it, and then I'm going to top stitch all the way around the outside using that scant 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, I'm going to leave long threads at the beginning and the end so I can tie them off. Because this is quite a thin piece of leather, I will use my awl just to hold it down to make sure that it's not going to stretch, because otherwise you'll end up with a wobbly zipper, and that's not a good thing. I'm using a Teflon cording foot. Sometimes people call them a zipper foot. It's not a zipper foot, it's a cording foot, but they work just as well as a zipper foot. I've never actually found a specific Teflon zipper foot, but these work really well. I don't know if you can get them for low shank machines. My machine is a Juki TL98P, and it's a high shank machine, so it takes a standard industrial foot, and you can find just about everything for industrial machines. Coming across the end of the zipper, taking it nice and slowly. That's it, just to get my placement right. As I get to this end where my zipper pull is, I'm just going to stop with my needle in, raise my foot, move my zipper out of the way, the zipper pull out of the way, and this is where those couple of stitches that I made in the top end of the zipper come into their own, because it means that the zipper teeth don't suddenly go poof, splaying off sideways, because they're held together with just those few stitches. Sometimes it's just the little things that make things easier. Pivot and across. Those zipper teeth again. Coming back down and trying to land again in the stitch hole that we started our stitching in. Raise the foot. Do your work out. Find a pair of scissors. I think I left them on the table, but I'll use these ones. It's all good. And again, you're used to this now. Taking those threads from the front to the back. So that there's no obvious stop and start to your stitching. and tie them off. You can remove any excess zipper from outside of your stitching. Some people like to use a lighter on the end of there. I've never bothered with that. I am, however, just going to add a little bit more glue just to make sure that these sides of the zipper are secured. I just don't want them flapping around inside of my pocket. You could use a glue stick if you prefer. And just secure that down. I'm just going to use a little drop of glue stick on those thread ends just to make sure that those don't move over and get caught in my zipper when it's opening and closing. So there we have the zipper in our gusset. Now we are going to create a circle by overlapping these two ends by 3/8 of an inch. So to make sure that I'm actually getting them exactly right, I'm actually going to mark the 3/8 of an inch on with my chalk marker. I'm going to add a little drop of, you could use double-sided tape. We've already established that I'm not a fan of it. A little drop of glue. I'm just going to take the second end and I'm just going to lay it on top there, butting up to that 3/8 of an inch mark. And what we end up with is a circle. I'm just going to change my foot. And to secure that, I'm just going to do a line of stitching along the very edge doing one line of stitching which is at the scant 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to do another line of stitching about 1/4 of an inch at the other side of it, just to make sure that that bit inside doesn't flap about. That's not in the pattern, that's just my personal preference. The scissors are about as blunt as they can be. So now we have this wonderful circle, which is the gusset that goes around this panel. Now we need to make sure that our magnetic fastener is in the bottom corner and that our zipper opens, we want it when it's finished to look like that, so that the zipper opens from left to right. So I'm just going to turn my gusset inside out. You will already have made quarter marks, hopefully, on this. So you've got a mark that's halfway across the top and the same on here. You've got centre marks on this panel where you've put your 8-inch zipper. I'm just going to mark those again because actually where my zipper is, I can't really see them. But I'm going to just mark them with chalk. And I can fold this in half, which will give me the centre at the bottom which is actually should be about 1/8 of an inch in. It should be 1/8 of an inch in from that edge that you've created on the inside. And then I'm going to match those two pieces up. That's the two, to find the quarter marks on the sides. So I can find the quarter mark on this side. I'm going to mark it, and then by pulling it this way I can find the quarter mark on the other side. And mark it. So with my panel right sides up and my little magnet right down in the bottom corner next to me, I'm going to put this gusset right sides together with my front pocket front. I'm going to match up that top mark with the quarter mark on the top of my panel, and I'm going to pop a clip in. I'm going to match up the quarter mark on the bottom of my gusset, so just where that join is, with the quarter mark on my pocket, and pop a clip in. I'm going to do exactly the same on these quarter marks on the sides of this pocket. You might find it easier if you open your zipper. It makes it a little less stiff. So I've now matched all those quarter marks, and what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to ease this gusset around these curves, and I'm going to clip all the way around. Now, easing leather is actually easier than easing just about anything else, because it does have that little bit of stretch to it. What you don't want to have are sort of gapy gaps. That's a technical term. Use as many clips as you feel comfortable with. There's no such thing as too many clips. And do each quarter separately. Don't try and do them all sort of at once. I find it's a lot easier to ease a curve in one at a time. And I do this strange thing where I kind of go like that, and I don't know if that's actually a technical thing or not, but it helps me to ease curves in. So undoing the zipper at the top will help you to ease those curves as you come around this top part. Because your zipper tape is not far off the edges of your gusset, so it's a bit stiffer. It makes it just that bit more stiff. So opening the zipper just gives you a little bit of wiggle room. If you find you get to a point where you're almost at the end and you've got a gapy bit, just take all the clips off and start again. Easing is something that takes a little bit of practice. The thicker your leather, the less stretch it will have, and the more difficult this will actually be, because these curves are quite they are quite sharp curves. But the gusset does fit perfectly. So you can see that's fully in there. There's no gapes. Let's just put an extra couple of clips around those curves. I couldn't fit too many more in if I wanted to. That's nice and secure. Let me just move the pattern on so I can actually see where we're going next. Oh, the computer's gone off, so I just need to put my magic number in so that I can actually see it. Because just for once, I'm reading a pattern. This doesn't happen often, so it's quite a novelty. And you might or may not have guessed, but I actually haven't haven't practiced this. This is the first time I've made this bag because I don't have leather as something in my stash. It's not something I use, so this is a bit of an experiment for me. So we're going to stitch all the way around the outside using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that might seem like it's not much of a seam allowance, but on leather, because it's not something that frays, you don't need quite the same amount of seam allowance as you would on fabric. So I'm going to reduce my stitch length down to 3 and a bit, and I'm just going to do one back stitch at the beginning. I'm just going to take off the clips as I get to the point that I'm stitching. I'm going to use this is actually for loom knitting, but it's really useful because rather than an awl, it's actually got a little bent top bit on it. It's not a tool for sewing, but it works, so I use it. And that allows me to just hold, it's like an extra finger, just hold the pieces together once I've taken the clip off. Because this leather has a shiny front, it's just as likely to move once I take the clips off. So this just allows me to keep it in place. Make sure that your other half of your zipper is out of your way. You don't want to stitch that as you're stitching this. That would be very bad. You may need to close your zipper slightly to get past that zipper pull, but actually I think my foot is quite narrow and is going to go past without too much issue. So I'm just going to keep going. Anybody else just dump their clips in the middle here? I usually end up with clips all over the place. I've got a big pile of them in the middle of my, in the throat space of my machine. And then I'll do something and I'll sweep them all onto the floor. I don't buy fancy clips. I buy cheap and cheerfuls from either AliExpress or Amazon because they all make exactly the same crunching noise as the clover clips, which are 4 times the price when they hit the floor and you tread on them. So I don't see that there's any necessity to pay for expensive ones when the cheaper ones do exactly the same job. Might not be as pretty colours, but that's all the difference that there is. Take this nice and slowly and just remove one clip at a time. For most of us, we would use a much bigger seam allowance for sewing, and when we've sewn curves like this, we would make little clips into the seam allowance to allow our fabric to ease around the curves easily. Because this is only an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, you are not going to be able to cut notches. Right, I have a problem because I can't get my foot past my magnetic fastener, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a couple of back stitches there. And I think what I'll need to do is actually use my zipper foot there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a narrower foot out just to get past that piece, and then I will put my Teflon foot back on. I don't really like sewing overly much with the narrow foot, but just to get past that, so I'm going back in where that's going past. That's all right. Just a moment of panic there. Because this isn't a Teflon foot, it doesn't glide quite as easily as the Teflon foot does on the leather. I'm just going to remove that and put my Teflon foot back on because it stitches better with the Teflon foot, even on the furry side of the leather. So I've just used it to get past that area where I've got the magnetic fastener, and it was just really tight there. Coming back around the curve here. Back to where we started our stitching. Back stitching a few stitches. Let's get rid of all the thread ends where I've stopped and started, and we can turn it right side out and just make sure that we've caught all of that all of the way around. We haven't got any unpleasant little gaps, and you can kind of roll this seam between your fingers just to make sure that it sits nicely. Just got to press it with your fingers almost. And there we have our front pocket that's going to go on the front of our bag. So So I'll grab the rest of the bits that I need and we'll move on to the next stage.